Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter when the ships are sailing. And I'd like to welcome back to the show our co-host all the way down in her beautiful new studio, Christy. How are you doing today, Christy?
I am well, Steve. How are you?
Not too bad. We are going to continue with our March episode of our Port Adventure series. It's been a lot of fun, and we are super excited to bring onto the show. They've been huge supporters of our show for a long time, and we're bringing the better half, Rachel from Minnesota. How you doing today, Rachel?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show this afternoon.
Not too bad.
Or and today, maybe I should say.
Whatever time anybody's listening to it is that's the time we're recording. We'll just kind of run with that. So,
right.
So today we're going to talk about Cozumel, and I think we're going to touch on Tortola a little bit as well. You guys have had a chance to go to both. Before we talk about that, why don't you remind our listeners, tell them a little bit about your family, who goes on the cruises, and which cruises you've been on to visit these ports.
Sure. Thanks for asking, Steve. So my husband, Nathan, and I have 3 kids. We have been cruising since we were just a family of 3 with 1 kid. So my first cruise was also our oldest daughter's first cruise, and that was in November of 2015. As our family has grown, we've always cruised on the Fantasy. We've been fortunate to do 7-day cruises each time we've gone. We just book them 2 years out, and then we slowly pay for them as we, over the course of the 2 years.
Smart.
Well, the price is worth it, but it's a lot. I think it's really the only way we could do it. Currently, our 3 kids are 7, 4, and 2. We're at the part of the year where birthdays are coming up. So by the time we go on our next cruise, and we do have one hopefully coming up at the end of this year, we'll be cruising with a 7, 5, and 3-year-old.
You've been able to do the Eastern and the Western with the Fantasy then?
That's correct.
And Christy, could you kind of remind everybody where the Eastern and the Western, the general itineraries of the Fantasy, which islands they stop at and how it works?
So the Eastern is going to go to St. Thomas typically and Tortola. Sometimes they swap out St. Martin, and occasionally they'll go to San Juan, and then they go to Castaway Cay. So and the Western goes to typically Cozumel, Jamaica, and the Grand Cayman Islands.
Perfect. And do you have a favorite between those two, Rachel? Or I mean, it's hard to pick. It's like picking between your favorite kids, I guess, right?
Right. I'll be honest, I don't know that I do. I mean, of course, cruising is very personal. Any vacation is very personal. On our very first cruise as a family, I was also, and that is actually where we're not going to talk about any of the excursions that we did on our first family cruise, which was the Eastern, but I was pregnant at that time, newly so. And so while it was super fun, there weren't any anti-nausea meds that were safe for me to take at that time. And so it's a little clouded as far as, right, like, how much did you enjoy that? Well, I don't know. I was just trying not to puke the whole time. So I don't know, like, truthfully, that I do have a favorite, because when I think about them, right, there's how you're feeling in your body as well as, like, the experience you have on the ship. And there was a lot of the feeling in your body on our first one. So, there's that.
For me, it depends on what I want out of it, because I feel like the Western Caribbean is better for like scuba diving and snorkeling and like water activities in general, beaches even. But in the Eastern is fine for just a regular beach day. But I mean, the Cayman Islands is pretty fantastic for a beach. And so it sort of depends on what I want out of it. In the Eastern, you get the extra sea day, which on the Fantasy is lovely because the ship is amazing. And so we love that too. So I don't want to pick a favorite, but it sort of depends on what I want out of my trip. I love them both.
What is the sea day you're talking of? I'm still trying to figure out this sea day thing. Extra sea days, I'm telling you. I need to get on the Fantasy and the Dream more often, I guess.
You do.
Right. Instead of just going to Europe and having to like run around like a crazy person all the time. Yes, you do.
Exactly. The sad part is that's what we're looking to book again next in 2022, hopefully. So, all right, well, we'll jump into it. We are going to talk about Cozumel, and we're actually going to flip and touch on Tortola a little bit. Christy, you've been to both, right?
I have.
Do you have a favorite between those two?
Cozumel.
Cozumel. Am I saying that right? Cozumel, Cozumel.
I say Cozumel.
Cozumel. Okay, well, I'll give you a little background on Cozumel. This comes from the Cruise Critics website. It is Mexico's largest and most populated Caribbean island, and I thought this was kind of cool. Jacques Cousteau declared it the most beautiful area in the world for scuba diving. And I've got a cousin who lives up in Minnesota with you, Rachel, and she was on the swim team when she was in college, along with her husband. They're big scuba divers, and they've been down there a lot of times. They said that it's very safe, professional, and they've got just some amazing pictures of diving with whale sharks, which I don't know if you've ever seen them before. They're huge. They're like these gigantic, very docile creatures. But I mean, I could not imagine like diving next to them because they're just gigantic. I'll have to see if I can find a picture and put it up on the website. But
so one thing to note with diving in Cozumel is you definitely want to be a good swimmer because there was a hurricane a few years ago. It was a bunch of years ago now, but there is a very strong current there. You literally have to swim to stay in one spot. So it's not a super easy dive. It doesn't mean it's necessarily hard, but you do have to swim in order to even control where you're going. It's going to be a drift dive. You're going to move the whole time. So just something to note about diving in Cozumel.
Good points there. Kind of maybe on a negative side, if there is one, is they can have up to 8 ships a day. Cozumel gets, in normal years, they get over 4 million visitors a year. But saying that 1/3 of the island is undeveloped, leaving pretty big stretches of pristine beaches and jungle. There's a lot of good duty-free shopping. I think that you guys can maybe both touch on that as we talk about it. They offer, the big things are water sports, as we kind of talked about, scuba, snorkeling, just hanging out on the beach. Cozumel's, the name means land of the swallow, which is Mayan. So there are a couple Mayan ruins. They're smaller. I'm not sure if either one of you guys can touch on those or not. But the main one is over on the mainland called Chichen Itza. We actually went there not on a cruise, just on a vacation that we took down to Cancun. And it is amazing. The downside to it is you have to take a ferry from the island over to the mainland. Then it is a long bus ride over to Chichen Itza. And so probably the things that we've heard in the past is maybe smaller kids, this might not be the thing to do, but just something to be wary of. Any thoughts on that one, guys?
I'm afraid not.
Okay, that's fine. Well, yeah. Anybody have any winning lottery ticket numbers on that one? No. Okay. Well, let's jump into Cozumel. Rachel, what have you and your family experienced when you've been there? Well, I guess how many times have you been there and what have you experienced and enjoyed?
Yeah, so we've just been once. So we went in 2017, December of 2017. And the excursion that we chose to do was the Alebrije painting workshop. We did this excursion about a week after Coco had come out. And so we were actually the only people on the Fantasy who signed up for that excursion. I can't imagine that that's going to be the case now, right? Like everybody now is going to be like, oh, Coco, we love it. We need to make an Alebrije. That was not what happened with our family, which on one side, it was super cool, right? Like we got some very individualized attention from our tour guide because you get a guided tour of the Discover Mexico Museum that's there in Cozumel. And you get to learn a lot about the history of the island and learning a lot about Mexican culture, learning about kind of how, right, like European culture kind of melded with the Mayan and Aztec culture that was there when they were conquested. It's probably the right word to describe that. So that piece of it was really cool. And then when we went to paint our Alebrijes, so we were there with our 2 daughters at the time. So we were there with our 3-year-old, she was 3 then, and a 1.5-year-old. And so our 3-year-old really, like she got into it. Our 1.5-year-old was snoozing, which was nice. One thing that's important to our family when we go on cruises is to learn about the islands that we visit. So we kind of make an effort to do things that are maybe slightly less touristy. So I thought it was really cool, right? To learn about the island and to learn about the culture. The one thing about the tour that I didn't love and that I think is worth noting is that there's a tequila tasting that's part of the tour. Our family is a dry family. And so they were real pushy with the tequila, and the whole time we were like, no, we don't want to try any of your locally made tequila. And they were a little bit pushy with that, but ultimately respected that decision. But if you're a person who is like in recovery, that's something that would be, to my mind, that would be good to know, right? But it might not be a bigger deal or as big a deal, I should say. If you're in a group of people, right? Like if you get some people that are like, yeah, I'll try the tequila. It's not as much as if there's two adults and they're just trying to push the liquor on you. So that's the excursion that we did. We thought about doing some shopping because you're right, there is just a ton of duty-free shopping right there on the port. And then ultimately decided not to because there wasn't really anything that stood out to us. It's like, oh yeah, we've really got to bring this thing back. You know, right? We already had our Alebrijes, which we still have. It's like a souvenir. So we didn't feel compelled to buy anything else.
I love that idea of, experiencing the culture and getting to know the history of where you're visiting. We try and do that as well, generally. But to kind of go, I have two questions, I guess. Did your 3-year-old daughter, did she enjoy the museum? Were there things there that she could interact with? Some younger kids could interact with as well?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking. It was a lot of, I guess not really.
That's okay.
There was like a movie about Mexico, and she thought that was really cool. Museums in the United States were used to there being like barricades if you can't touch things. Not the case at the Discover Mexico Museum. And so we were spending a lot of time being like, oh, hey, look at that really cool mask, but also just look at it with your eyes and not with your hands. Part of the museum, there was an ofrenda, very much like one that you would see in Coco. And there are a lot of things that little hands might want to grab, but that they shouldn't. And so that is also something to be aware of, that it's really colorful and enticing to young kids, but there's not anything to stop them from touching everything, even though they're not supposed to touch everything.
No, I totally understand that. Christy, do you have any advice for traveling to museums with small children?
Pick a different excursion, perhaps.
I was going to put you on the spot there. Sorry.
Children leashes. No, well, little kids carriers are fantastic, but that's not really helpful for a 3-year-old. So, yeah, take a different trip. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but, I had a hard time. It's tough to pick one, when you're with those little guys.
That is a tough age. I guess, what is an alebrije for? I'm going to be bad. I've only watched half of Coco, so I'm not an expert on Coco. And for people that don't know what an alebrije is, what is it?
Oh, yeah. So, and I know if you're not somebody that likes to cry in front of all of your loved ones, it's probably very wise to not watch Coco. An alebrije is an animal-like spirit guide that guides your spirit from, when you die into the afterlife. But they're extremely fantastical, right? Like I think of the alebrijes that we see in Coco. One of the most prominent ones is a cat. I guess is probably the best. I mean, like a giant cat that you can ride, and she has wings, and it's like very colorful, right? Like a lot of like oranges and reds, bright blues, and really cool patterns. Actually, I didn't do this on purpose, but I actually have a picture right by me, so I'll kind of hold it up. But right, like something like this.
So it's like a tile with the cat?
Yeah. Or? So this is a postcard, and I'll take it out of the plastic. But in this, actually, we got on that excursion as well. We ended up with a lot of like art supplies that have come home with us and have hung around now for the last 4 years.
Well, I'm looking at the picture on the website for Disney Cruise Line for the adventure itself, and it's got like almost a picture of Dante. It's like a statue, and somebody's
and
like
it has
really,
like that cool pattern.
Decorated it up into that cool pattern. And I'll try and put a picture of this in the show notes when this show comes out. Yeah, but so it's just is a spirit guide of a super fantastical animal type. When you did this, did you get to pick your spirit guide that you wanted to? Yeah. That's cool. What did you guys do? So our daughter picked an owl. I know they have like just little wooden carvings, and you paint them how you want. So she picked an owl. Nathan got a snail, which was pretty cool. And then I picked like a pheasant type bird, which I actually haven't seen it in a really long time because I brought it to work so it's sitting at my desk, and I have not been to my office for quite some time. So when I go back, I'll be able to jog my memory on what it actually looks like. But there are a variety of animals that you
can pick from when you go. I remember seeing like coyotes, turtles, and there were snakes, all kinds of animals.
So, Christy, who would be your spirit animal? You hate when I do this.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm going to go with a bat.
Yeah. Ew.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You can leave this in if you choose. So we've been spending, winter in Florida. And one day I went to trim up Blake's hair, but I wanted to go outside because it's messy. But I went outside at dusk and we were in one of our horrible rentals, and in between the two buildings, the bats were flinging around. I made Dave come out, my husband, and have a towel ready so he could like swat at the bats because they kept like swooping and they weren't that close. But I'm like, I can't cut this hair while being concerned about the bat. So I need you to be on bat duty so that I can trim my son's hair. So, Steve, you are not allowed to be a bat. I've decided.
I just got to watch out. I just got to watch out for Dave, or my spirit animal has to watch out for Dave, I guess.
Yeah, I made that decision. I don't know. Like, I'm a Leo, so maybe a lion, just part of my personality. Maybe that's what I would think of.
I like that. So I guess as we kind of finish up with Cozumel, you guys didn't go shopping. Christy, can you talk about any of the shopping or other things about Cozumel that people might want to know? Just kind of an overview from the experiences that you've had there.
We actually went to the Diamonds International and I bought my tag watch from there. Maybe I shouldn't put this on the air so I don't get mugged. Somebody tries to take our watch. And then Dave impulse bought a watch. Like he had no intention, and he has been wearing it ever since. So that was about 5 years ago, I think. So there is the Diamonds International, which has their big warranty program. So if you wanted to buy diamonds or watches, they also sort of force tequila on you when you're done with the purchase. And because my husband impulse bought a tag watch, which is a little bit of a larger purchase, I made him drink the tequila, which he doesn't typically drink, not because of any reason he can't drink. He just chooses not to. So I made him drink some tequila. That was fun. In addition to high-end jewelry locations, which you can choose to purchase or not purchase, there are also t-shirts and trinkets and all of that ridiculousness. One trip to Cozumel, I think I've been to Cozumel like a dozen times, but one trip to Cozumel had my cousin bought my son one of those random little toys that the little wood pieces like flip around. I don't know how to describe it, but it was $1. He loves that thing still. We still have it. It's 2 years old. And it was some random toy for $1. There's also a drugstore in Cozumel at the port. And there is a lot of different over-the-counter medication that is not over-the-counter in the United States. So that's sometimes a fun journey to take. So you can get some medication. Yeah, just all those little shops. There's also right down the street, it's not very far, a grocery store. So you can always ask the locals. I think it's kind of like across the street from outside the port. You can guide your way there. So if there's something you needed during your cruise that you weren't otherwise able to get, you could get from the grocery store.
How about beach experiences? Talking about having that many ships in port, any advice on beach experiences, booking those, Christy?
So there's actually a beach like right outside the port. It's like right there. And I think you could rent chairs and stuff for like $10. So if you are adventurous, you could try something like that. There are several beach break and like day resort type excursions that are offered in Cozumel. And so that might be fun for family because it's like, what you're getting, you have your controlled transportation to get there. In the past, we have done that. It's called Mia something. I can't think of the name, and we've actually taken the transportation there ourselves. And there is the whole taxi row, like right when you get out of the port, like is every port basically, that you can get in, you can tell them where you want to go. If you know in advance, you can do like day trips at these different resorts that you set up yourself, or you can go and do it with Disney. So, I will say that even when they have 8 ships, I actually feel like Cozumel swallows it well. Like they can handle that crowd really quite well.
Just looking at just looking through the amount of the excursions that they have here in Cozumel, it's just amazing. So I can see, to your point there, Christy, where there's just so many different things to do, whether you stay on the island or go to the mainland, where people could just kind of disappear and it's not quite as crowded as you think it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add, Rachel or Christy, about Cozumel before we kind of jump into the excursions we might go on?
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add just about our excursion that was a little culture shocking to me, since we were the only ones from the ship that were on our excursion, we took a taxi to the Discover Mexico Museum, and that was new to me. You know, I didn't really travel internationally as a kid, and so like all of my outside the U.S. travel has been cruising with Disney. So it was a little culture shocking to be in the back of a car with two young children. Nobody was wearing seatbelts, and
seatbelts in those cars.
Right. Like they weren't even there. So that was just, I would say, also worth noting, right? Like if you're new to traveling outside the United States, you know, if you end up hopping in a vehicle because that's what's available to you, you just mentally prepare yourself for that.
Disney? That is great. That's a really great point. So you booked that excursion through Disney Cruise Line?
Correct.
And they didn't put you on a bus?
Nope.
They put you in a car with little children. That is fascinating. Yeah. I mean, and I don't, because they have those at least vans or in some of the destinations, and they have those smaller buses that they use in like real small, but not a car that they use in some of the destinations. So that is something to note.
So yeah, the four of us, I guess you get a taxi.
Well, let's pretend that today we're actually getting on the Fantasy, heading over to Cozumel on that wonderful Western 7-day cruise. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of see what Disney has to offer and pick one. Christy, why don't you start it off? What would you and your family be doing?
We are in love with dolphin experiences, which I know there are some people that have different opinions about that. So everybody's opinion aside, my family, we have done them twice and I love them so much. And Blake's little face when he is swimming with the dolphins, like even at 5, they did the dolphin swim and where they're swimming your child, which is insane. We've talked about that on a couple of episodes, I believe, that when I've done those. But it was an excursion because I started cruising pretty young that I had wanted to do my entire life. And I did not do it for the first time until Blake was 5. So a couple of years ago. And it lived up to that expectation and desire that I had had for all of those years. Because when I was growing up, there wasn't enough money to do those. Actually, the prices of them have come way down because it used to be like $400 a person when I was in high school. And now it is like $130 a person or something, which is just obviously a big savings. So I have picked the dolphin excursion. The one that I picked with Disney Cruise Line is the dolphin swim at the Dolphinaries. I don't know how to say that. It does like where you meet the dolphins, you're next to them, you're in the water, they'll do the swim, the push and the pull. It is so fun. That is the one I have picked for myself.
And the price at that right now, of course, this is, subject to change. Right now, just for people to kind of gauge, is $133 for 10 and up and $111 for 5 to 9. So it looks like, is 5 the lowest you could do on that one, Christy?
Yes. There is another one that has younger ages, I believe, but you wouldn't swim or potentially be in the water like that with them, where they'll do like maybe you stand on a platform. We have seen other families doing these, and then you pet the side of them and stuff like that. And this particular one comes with lunch too. So it's like there's that added bonus, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful day. Yeah, it looks like you get 0 to 2 if you want to just be an observer at the Dolphinaries as well. So sometimes it's hard to pick when your kids are younger, trying to find an excursion. So
let me just say too, to that point, we cruised a bunch when Blake was under 3 years old, and some of those times we just used the ship. Like we didn't feel like we had to go and do an excursion. Or one of the times if we had gone shopping one day, and we left Blake with my mom, who happened to be on the ship, or you can leave them with the kids club. So the great part about Disney Cruise Line is their kids clubs are open and no additional charge on port days. So you can leave the ship for a couple of hours without your child if you want to go and do something that's more adult friendly. And then you either use the nursery or the kids club, depending on the age of your child. Don't feel like just because you're going to a cruise port, you have to do an excursion.
That's a good point there.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we get caught up in like, well, what are we going to do here? What are we going to do there? And especially if you have, I'll go back to my crazy European trips, is if you've got a port stop every day, you kind of need a day off sometimes because
Right.
you can just
And
run yourself ragged.
When you went to your European cruise, Steve, you talked about Nice being one of your favorite days, and the kids like ran on rocks, and you guys just like bopped around instead of doing an actual excursion with the cruise.
Definitely.
Or even on your own.
Definitely. Okay, Rachel, what about you?
Yeah. So for Cozumel, I think one of the ones that they have on the website right now is the Chocolate and Piñata Seaside Workshop. And that just looks like a ton of fun to me. Of course, young kids, it keeps coming up because I've got them. This is one that is good for all ages. So like, this is one that I would like to do with the family. And really, as I'm looking at it, like, it's not that expensive. If you want to bring your babies with you, it's free. 3 to 9 is $59, and then 10 and up is $79. You get to make a piñata, and the piñata stays, which, right, like if you've got young kids, they're coming home with crafts all the time. So anytime that you can craft, and then the craft doesn't come with you, that is super awesome. To my mind anyway, right? Like,
No, you're right.
There's so much recycling in our home. And chocolate is always a winner. And I've always found it to just be so cool to learn about the different techniques that the Aztecs and the Mayans have used to develop chocolate, over thousands of years, I guess, if you will. So that would be a winner for me.
Yeah, that sounds like fun with your kids and whatnot. And chocolate is a big part of the Mayan culture, and there are several different excursions there in Cozumel, which you can enjoy that and have that get that history of how it's played out in their culture. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I didn't think I was going to do this one, but we actually got to swim in a cenote when we were down there. So I'm going to I think we're going to take the kids and we're going to do the caves, caverns, and Paradise Lagoon. And this one, we're going to have to get off the island. So talking about the ferry ride, it's a 45-minute ferry ride over to the mainland. Then we're going to get on a bus. We're going to ride another 40 minutes. So if you got younger kids, you may not want to do this one.
Or you're me.
Yep. I'm in that boat as well.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
This is an 8-hour, it's an 8-hour tour.
8-hour tour.
Exactly. Like, unlike Gilligan, we're going to make it back to the boat. I guess one thing, Christy, why don't you if you were going to go off of Cozumel to the mainland, would you feel more comfortable booking with Disney so that you don't miss that?
I mean, the theory is that you have an insurance, right? That if the excursion goes long, then they deal with you. They have to feed you. They have to get you anything that you would have needed, or the ship will wait for you. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how long you're in Cozumel for. If you're only in Cozumel for 9 hours, I'm taking Disney to do an 8-hour tour. But Cozumel is usually a super long port. So, I mean, if you're there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., you have a little bit of time. You don't have that long for an 8-hour tour, but I don't know. I would probably, if I was doing all that seems pretty involved, I'd probably do Disney for that.
Yeah, and I don't think the price is too bad. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not too bad. But anyway, so once you get over there, you do a 40-minute bus ride. You go to a cenote. What is a cenote? Well, the whole water table below Florida and below the Yucatan Peninsula is pretty low. And so they have these depressions into the ground, which are actually super cool. They're almost... They drop down and there's just this clear water, and they're underground water caves, basically, which I think was totally crazy because when we went down and snorkeled in it, and you get to see the cenotes and stalactites and stalagmites. And if I'm saying this wrong, to somebody who knows better, please correct me. But you get to see all that down in these kind of depressions in the ground. Then there's all these tunnels, and there are people that will scuba dive through the tunnels, which I don't think I would do that. I think that would kind of freak me out through these underwater caves. And you're not doing that in this. You're just getting kind of a history of what a cenote is, a little bit about the spiritual rituals, the Mayan culture, how it played in the Mayan culture. So you get down for a couple different snorkeling sessions. And then they take you over to a warm water bay where you can snorkel as well with some tropical fish and marine life. You get to have lunch, complimentary beverages where they probably ply you with tequila, I'm guessing. Enjoy the sunshine, take a swim at the beach, and then take your short ride back to where you'll get your ferry back to Cozumel. Then you can stop in, get your T-shirt, your $1 trinket that your kid's gonna love way more than the $1,000 thing. Not $1,000 thing you bought them for Christmas,
or the $1,000 vacation that they're taking them on.
Exactly. But I think that's probably go.
Exactly, Rachel.
Yeah. So this one's $133 for 10 and up. They do have an age 8 and up to go on it, and 8 to 9 is 113, 133 for 10 and up. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to get back on the Beautiful Fantasy. We're going to head next to whatever our next port of call is going to be. Maybe it's a day at sea where we could just relax after that long day. So
I think it is actually.
Well, that's perfect. Get a nice day to kind of relax by the pool. Maybe go take in a movie, see a show, enjoy the food on board the ship, and kind of go from there. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and being part of our show today and helping us out with Port Adventures in Cozumel.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me. It was really great to be here with you both.
No problem. And remind everybody your next cruise is hopefully on the Fantasy again.
Yeah. So with any luck, we're actually not going to be on the Fantasy again.
What?
Not ever, I assume. I assume someday maybe you'll be on the Fantasy again.
Yeah, and now oh my gosh, see this memory thing, right? With the lack of sleep, I'm looking it up because I know we're not on the Fantasy, but I don't remember where we're sailing on.
Does it leave it in Miami?
No, the Dream. So we'll be on the Dream, hopefully, November 29th to December 3rd this year. I guess we'll see.
That could happen.
Yeah, I think so. Right? Like,
maybe.
If our kids aren't going back to in-person school in September, then I'm probably just going to write it off. But I'm cautiously optimistic for my own sanity. I'm cautiously optimistic that back to, that like the next school year is going to be kind of back to normal. And if you can be in a classroom, with 20 other second graders, or the same for kindergarten, why can you not be on the Dream?
That should be a very maritime cruise as well, right?
It is.
Yeah. Have you done one of those?
Yeah, actually, that's mostly what we've done. Our last cruise in 2019 was a Halloween cruise, but it turns out that being in Minnesota, where just last week it was -30 outside, October in the Caribbean is way too hot for us. Like, we just did not have a fun time because we were...
I didn't expect that.
Well, neither did I.
The Caribbean would be better, or... Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, I don't know. When we went, it was, like high 90s, and that's it's too much. It was too much. So, for the holiday, we love Christmas in our family. And so it's nice to do those maritime cruises, but also it feels warm to us, but not so warm that we're miserable and can't enjoy the outdoors. So December's a good time to go, to my mind anyway.
No, I get that. So, as far as, being too warm, especially if you're, out and about on the ship, it can be pretty hot down there in October still. So, well, I guess as we get out of here, once again, thanks so much, Rachel, for coming on. All the best to you and your family. We hope that very maritime cruise goes. Thanks for helping out with our Port Adventure series. And when you guys get back, we look forward to talking to you about that cruise and hearing about all the fun that you guys had.
I'm looking forward to it as well. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a good weekend.
Thanks. You too. You too. So, all right. All the best, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Rachel for coming on and sharing her and her family's experiences as they've cruised to Cozumel several times, and it was fun to learn all about making an aviero down there in Cozumel. And I do apologize, this episode got out a little late. This is our March look at port excursions. In April, we're going to head over to the western side of Mexico, and we'll take a look at the ports of Ensenada, Cozumel, Cabo, and Puerto Vallarta. Well, if you're enjoying this show, we sure would appreciate it if you know somebody else who enjoys Disney Cruise Line or just cruising in general. If you'd pass it on, that helps us get the show known a little bit better in the cruising community. Also, if you have time, we sure would appreciate it if you go over to iTunes and leave us an iTunes review. Once again, that helps with the numbers and just people being able to find the show in general when they search for Disney Cruise Line content. If you'd like to support our show, you can also do so via our Patreon program. Go over to patreon.com/DCL podcast and you can find out all the information there. With the summer 2022 release dates out, and also Royal Caribbean announcing that they are going to start sailing out of the Bahamas, out of Nassau, and also Celebrity Cruise Line sailing out of St. Martin. If you need somebody to work with planning your next cruising vacation and you don't have a travel agent yet, you can always reach out to Christy over at packyourpixiedust.com. She's got a lot of experience, especially with Celebrity Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, and of course, Disney Cruise Line as well. Well, between now and our next show, if you and your family are heading out on your next vacation, staycation, or just hunkering down and enjoying each other's company for spring break, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL Podcast, we want to wish you to be well, take care of each other, enjoy your time together, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.